So I get a lot of questions from people who want more information on the Loatheb set. Should I be wearing this set of hit gear? Should I be wearing this set of Darkmantle? What exactly are the pieces I should be swapping in and out? And should I be taking 2 spores? Should I be taking 1 spore? How do the spore buffs work? Is there a difference between sword and dagger taking the spore? So I made a live tutorial yesterday, kind of going over all the explanations of how the Loatheb fight works, whether you want to take 2 spores, whether you want to take 1 spore, what are the most common gear swaps that you want to be making, the Darkmantle pieces I would start out with personally, and just general recommendations for the Loatheb gearing. So yeah, here you guys go. For those that couldn't catch the tutorial live, here's the upload. And if you do want to catch any of this sort of content live, I'm doing more of these mini tutorials during my stream these days. You can catch me at twitch.tv/snowme. Give us a follow. And of course guys, if you want to help support any of the free content that I do create, you can check out the merch link in the description below. Sword and dagger, t-shirts and hoodies, and we have mouse desk mats as well, which we just added a little bit ago. So thank you guys, appreciate it. Alright guys, so today now we are going to cover a live rundown because everyone's always asking me what gear should I use for Loatheb. I'm daggers, I'm swords, this is what I have, what should I be using instead? The answer is that it depends, and people don't like that answer because they want me to just say this is exactly what you should be using. But I'm going to show you how to essentially do this yourself. And then I'm going to recommend some basic gear rotations you can make, which tend to be a DPS upgrade for almost everyone. And I'm basically going to teach you how to use the Samurai spreadsheet as well to analyze the Loatheb fight for yourself if you want to get a more customized view of what gear you should be using on Loatheb. Alright, so first things first, if you don't have the Samurai spreadsheet, this is a Samurai spreadsheet I'm using here. Okay. You can run this off Google Docs. You don't need any Excel or anything. It works fine in Google Docs. The reason I use Simonize for Loatheb passing and Loatheb testing is because it gives me a lot of nitty-gritty options for me to play around with settings. Garcia gives me an overall look at what would be better when I have Spore buff, but Simonize lets me customize when I have the Spore buff, how many Spore buffs I have, the downtime, the different gear options while I'm swapping in and out. So Simonize is a lot better when it comes to Loatheb customization, I guess you could say. Alright, so first things first, if you don't have this, download it. As I said, it runs in Google Docs, and then you go to the main page. So on the main page is where you want to set up your default options. So first, before we set it up, I already kind of have it set up for swords because I wanted to show you just flat out the difference just changing a few pieces of gear makes. And then I'll show you how to set it up because I'm going to reconfigure this for daggers and basically do a sim of my own gear. So I just have a rough gear set here. I have this set up with what I would be running, right? Like Skull Pork. I have this set up for DMF week, so all my buffs and consumables, everything are done. So this is just kind of like your default DMF week gear set with buffs and everything on Horde side. So if you see here, this is just a very standard set. Now, some people may have better gear, some people may have worse, but this is just a standard gear set I have here. Look what happens when I just change a few things. So this is, I think it's a 180-second fight, which is a 3-minute fight. It's fairly standardish. Most fights for decent guilds are between 3 to 4 minutes, right? So 3 minutes is a decent pass length. Faster guilds, you do it even faster, actually. But let's say I swap in, let's go Darkmantle. So pay attention to this number, 1647 is how much DPS it's passing now for the fight. Let's say we swap in Darkmantle. So Darkmantle braces. Let's go Darkmantle tunic. Let's go Darkmantle boots. What do we want for the fourth one? Let's sort the belt out actually. If I remember right, the belt works. So you can see we've already gained DPS here. So 1670 DPS gain. So the reason why people messaged me before when I did my advanced DPS guide video and they said, hey Snow, I'm trying Darkmantle but it's not working out, is because the Samurai spreadsheet lets you sim based on your cooldown usage. So I'm customizing this to sim when I have, sometimes I have Spore buff, sometimes I don't. This is going to be confusing for you guys. You don't have to pay attention to this yet. I'll show you how you use it. But essentially the Samurai spreadsheet is customizing for the times I have Spore buff and when I don't. The Garcia doesn't, it just assumes you have Spore buff for the fight, essentially. So again, this is why I like the Samurai spreadsheet more. But yeah, so this is where you look at the DPS differences, and this is why you swap gear. And you just a few gear swaps, you just swap in, literally all I did here is swap in Darkmantle, and I'm already getting a DPS increase. And this isn't even necessarily the best gear option, right? Like if I swap belt out, let's go Darkmantle gloves instead. I just gained 5 DPS. So this is why you kind of play around with the options, all right? So now let's start from the start. As if you're brand new, you don't know how to use Simonize. This is how you do it. So first things first, you gotta set up your race. This is up in the corner. I'm undead, so I have it set to undead. You should set to what you are, obviously, and then Simonize will know to use the right stuff for you. So you set up your race. You set up your talents here. So under talents, I'm gonna change some things because we're gonna go daggers now. So I'm gonna sim it as if I'm doing this for myself now. All right, so let's do get rid of sword spec. We're gonna go dagger spec. So this is where it doesn't have every talent, but it has the ones that actually affect your pass. So you notice some stuff isn't on here. Okay, then we go here under rotation and ability. We're gonna go daggers. Then I like to do a 1-point slice and dice opener. So we go 1-point slice and dice. So now my talents are set. So now if you haven't set up your buffs, you should customize this for what buffs that you run. I don't know what buffs you guys run, but this, I have it set up for Darkmoon Fair week right now. So you can see I tick Darkmoon Fair, I tick Scorpok. So just tick what you have essentially and untick stuff that you don't have. Don't forget to change your totems and blessings and things if you're a Horde or Alliance. That's one thing people forget to do a lot. So I have this just set up for my buffs already. Let me see, what else do I need to set? Oh, fight duration. So here in fight duration, you want to set this up for your own fight duration. I have 3 minutes because that's roughly around what I'm expecting my guild to do, 3 minutes or less. So I have it set up for 3 minutes. You can just change this for your own guild. Boss level you should leave at 63, and then armor is heavy. So 37-31 is how much armor Loatheb has. So you can set this as the base and that's fine. Okay, so now this is pretty much all set up, good to go. So now I'm just gonna swap my gear around to make sure this is simming my own gear. So let me see, we use ACLGs because I do not have a death sting, unfortunately. Let's go Harbinger of Doom, Harbinger of Doom. So I'm using Harbinger of Doom with a Peugeot. So we go here to Peugeot. So I'm going to start with just my standard gear set. So this is just my standard gear set here that we're going to be wearing. I'm still using Death Dealers. Did I swap out all the Darkmantle? I did. Okay. So now this is essentially just a blank slate. This is what I start with. This is exactly what gear I have. And now we want to start by first adjusting the cooldowns. So under the cooldowns tab here, you see you click here. And this is where you customize your Spore usage. So just by default, Simonize is going to just guess where you want to use Blade Flurry and Adrenaline Rush. It'll kind of optimize them, but it won't have this at the bottom here, which is Fungal Bloom, right? So let me just turn this off for you. All right, so I turn this off. So this is essentially just a normal pass right now. This is Fungal Bloom. By the way, under main, make sure you have Undead selected for the mob type. So here it says Undead. Make sure you have that selected. That's an important one. But back under cooldowns tab, what you want to do now is you want to turn on the Fungal Bloom buff. So what I have here is just a rough estimate. You can put, you have to look at your own log and say, okay, when do I normally get the Fungal Bloom buff, or what group am I in for Fungal Bloom? And then you can put in your time. I'm just going to put in a rough time here. So let's say 25 seconds. Let's say that's when I get my first Fungal Bloom. So under this column here, this first use column is where you can set where you use your first usage of the cooldown. So I said use my Blade Flurry at 30 seconds and Adrenaline Rush at 30 seconds as well. So essentially I'm just saying, okay, I'm going to get Fungal Bloom, then I'm going to pop full cooldowns. And then you can see it uses its pistol T at 50 seconds as well. So that's just what I have set. You don't have to use this as well. But obviously I'm going to aim for 2 blade flurries. So I left the second one on automatic. It doesn't really matter when, because I won't have fungal bloom for the second one. So I just left the second blade flurry on automatic. But what you want to do here is just make sure that all your cooldowns are stacked up with your fungal bloom. The question you have to ask yourself anytime you're doing Loatheb now, and this is something Ra brought up earlier as well for those that are watching this live, is you have to decide, do you want to get 2 fungal blooms? Do you want to get 1 fungal bloom? Do you even want to get any fungal bloom buffs at all? Do you want spore buffs at all? As a sword rogue, most of the time you want at least 1, sometimes 2 buffs. As a dagger rogue, you usually want at least 1 buff, and sometimes even no buffs. So the way this works is sword rogues benefit way more from the crit, the extra crit from the spore buff. So typically they value the spore buff more. Now the problem is, if you look at the kill timings here, so let's say you have a 3-minute kill timing and you get the second spore buff. Let's say you get the second spore buff at 140 seconds in. You're not getting full value from your spore buff. You're losing, let's say, 20 seconds of your spore buff. So this is why for a lot of rogues, you have to consider, do I even want the second spore buff? Because I might be out of combat for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds to go get that spore buff and then come back. It's not going to be always worth it for you to lose that in combat time. So you can sim this yourself here on the user input downtime. So you see this here, it says user input downtime. Here you can set any time during the fight. You can say, okay, I'm out of combat for 10 seconds. So I go 5 seconds, 5 seconds. So now it says that I'm out of combat for these 10 seconds of the fight. So if you want to play around with your downtime, how much time it takes you to go get your spore buff, you can. I'm going to leave that for now. We're not going to get into the super confusing aspects of that because I don't want to confuse you guys. But the too long didn't read is, for most dagger rogues, if you're not getting full value from the second spore buff in particular, don't go for it, in my opinion. Don't go for the second spore buff if you're not getting full value. And by full value, I mean a spore buff lasts for 90 seconds. But just remember that typically, you're only going to get 1 spore buff really quickly. Because ideally is you wait for the spore to just before it's going to spawn, you let other people start running towards the spore, then you pop your sprint, you run in, grab the spore buff and run back out. And then maybe you can get it away with 5 seconds downtime. It's very hard to do this ideally, but you can get away with, like, let's say 5 to 7 seconds downtime. And then that might be worth for 1 spore buff. But on your second one, you're not going to have sprint anymore, right? Unless some crazy things happening on your Loatheb, you shouldn't have a second sprint going there, most likely. So you probably won't have sprint again, which means your second spore buff is going to have a lot of downtime. So let's say you're out of combat for 15 seconds. It's at that stage, if you're losing 15 seconds of auto attack and attacking time, it's losing your value on the second spore buff. Okay, so the too long didn't read. If you're not getting full value from the second spore buff, highly consider not even doing the second spore buff. And you can sim this if you want, because you can add in the second spore buff if you want. You can say, okay, I get second spore buff at 140 seconds. Is this a DPS gain? But roughly speaking, I can tell you right now, for a lot of people, it's not a DPS gain to do second spore buff if you don't get full value. And the only ones who should consider doing second spore buff if they don't get full value is potentially sword rogues, but even then, if you're out of combat for too long, it's not worth it. So for me personally, I only do 1 spore buff because I'm a dagger rogue and I gain the least amount of value from the spore buff. Essentially, dagger rogues just don't gain much. We already crit a ton. Backstab's already critting. We're already almost at our crit cap. Dagger rogues just don't gain a whole lot. It's a good buff, but we don't gain anywhere near as much as the sword guys, unfortunately. So I'm only going to sim this for 1 spore buff. You can sim this for yourself based on what you want. But I'm only doing 1 spore buff here. At 25 seconds, I get a spore buff. Alright. So now I have this all set up. You can see I have my cooldown stacked over my spores. We go back to the main sheet now. Okay, so now my number is 1569 DPS. So now I need to start changing out gear. The first thing you want to look at is hit gear. That's kind of an easy... Well, there's 2 things you want to look at. You have 2 options, which is hit gear or Darkmantle gear, or both potentially. Now, the question you want to ask is how good is your gear? The better your gear, the harder it's going to be for you to find niche upgrades. So what I found is the more I got into Phase 6 BIS with Bone Scythe, Tier 3 and other pieces, the harder it was to find good hit gear upgrades, because you start losing more and more DPS as you get better gear when you go back. But the worse your gear, the more important it is for you to do these gear sets, because you can really gain a huge amount of DPS if you're coming in with 1 phase, 2 phase old gear still, because you don't lose as much DPS swapping back to Darkmantle or your hit gear. So here are the main pieces I would look at. There's going to be some niche pieces depending on your own gear set, but for hit gear, these are what I would look at is Drakefang Talisman, so DFT, 2% hit, Great Trinket. Band of Akuria, 2% hit, Great Trinket. Boots of the Shadow Flame, 2% hit, Great Boots. So you're gonna see a theme here. Everything I'm talking about basically just has a ton of hit. So you should sim those kind of pieces versus what you have right now. Now I just happen to be already using DFT and Akuria, so I don't have to worry about that swap. But I'm using Bone Scythe boots here. So let's say I want to test out Boots of Shadow Flame. So you're gonna see it's actually within 1 DPS and actually lose a DPS. Now you might be saying, hey Snow, I used the Garcia spreadsheet and Boots of the Shadow Flame was a DPS increase. But what you're not realizing is the Garcia spreadsheet is simming as if you have Spore buff the entire fight, really. It's saying that it's only telling you your DPS gain if you did the entire thing with Spore buff. But Simonize, as we customize on the cooldowns tab here, is saying, okay, you don't have Spore buff for this period, but you have Spore buff for this period, and then you don't have Spore buff again. So that's why Boots of the Shadow Flame on paper is a DPS upgrade, but once you take into account the time when you don't have Spore buff, it's a DPS downgrade, depending on what you're using. But if you don't have tier 3 boots yet, it's a DPS upgrade for most people. So again, this just comes down to what you have. Like I said earlier, the better your gear, the less options you have to swap in and out as far as hit gear goes. So I'm not going to actually go Boots of the Shadow Flame because this is a 1 DPS downgrade for me here. So we're going to stick with our Bone Scythe Sabatons. Now, one piece that does work out very well is in your wrists. So even you have tier 3 wrists, one option you can look at is QEBs. Or Bloodfang braces, which are almost the same thing. Bloodfang braces or QEBs both sim as a very nice DPS upgrade on average. So 1576 DPS versus, if I go back to my tier 3, 1568, 69 DPS. So that's quite a solid jump just for one piece here. That's just one piece, and we just gained 7 DPS. Alright, so that's just one piece. Another good option to look at is, if you're just doing a hit set, is Bloodfang chests. So if you're still using Death Dealers like me, Death Dealers is very crit based. So when I swap to Bloodfang chest, here, so 1576, I actually gain DPS, 1578. So Bloodfang is actually outpassing Death Dealers for me on the Loatheb fight, based on the settings I have. So those are the main things I would generally look at is Bloodfang chest, Bloodfang wrist / QEB wrist, Akuria, and for your trinket, DFT. So those are the main options. So Boots of the Shadow Flame, DFT, Akuria, QEBs, Bloodfang chest. Those are where I would get started with as far as hit pieces go. Oh, and if you don't have hit on your back, the hit on the back is a good option as well. As far as things like Darkmantle trinket is going to depend on what your other trinket alternatives are. For example, I'm already using Mark of the Champion. So if it's just too good to replace, right? It's just pure attack power. Attack power still works very well in this fight. So I can't actually swap out for the other things. So something else you want to try is Darkmantle. Darkmantle performs really, really well. And 2 Darkmantle pieces that I highly recommend that you try out doing is chest. You can see the DPS loss from chest is actually very little from chest piece. From 2.5 to Darkmantle is very little. I don't have tier 3, so maybe it'd be more if I had tier 3, but because I don't have tier 3 chest yet, it's barely a DPS loss, right? So it's 1563 to 1569. It's like 6 DPS loss. So that's a very good DPS loss there. Because essentially what we're doing when we swap in Darkmantle is we try to find the 4 slots that give us the least amount of DPS loss. And then the Darkmantle proc will pull us over the line once we swap 4 pieces in. Our wrist is very, very good. So you can see 1563, swap in Darkmantle. I only lose 10 DPS, which is actually not a big DPS loss there. For sure, Tunic and Braces are the 2 I would start out with, and then you can kind of play around with your other slots. The other slots aren't as cut and dry, but Darkmantle Tunic and Darkmantle Braces are the 2 Darkmantle slots I would start out with, and then see what your DPS loss is for your other slots. So the other slots are going to completely depend on what you have available to you. Like if you're still using horrible boots, obviously swap in Darkmantle boots then, because you're not going to lose DPS as much. So I'm going to do belt, and I believe boots were my next best option after that. So this is, you just have to play around with this. This is how you find the other 2 slots. Just play around with swapping in Darkmantle and the other slots. See how much DPS you lose, and then swap in the pieces that you lose the least amount of DPS. So for me, I know that this is one of the best setups I can do, which is Tunic, Braces, Belt, and Darkmantle boots. And you can see I'm up to 1581 now, right? So we essentially just gain, what was it, 1569? 79. We essentially just gain 12 DPS. From Darkmantle, and that's all I've swapped in, just pure Darkmantle. And I don't even have the option of gloves because I'm stuck on ACLG still. If I had Death Sting, then I could potentially use gloves as a slot, but I can't since I don't have dagger skill anywhere else yet. All right, so this is this is how you do the Darkmantle set. So to sum up, when you enter Simonize, set up your race, your talents, your base gear, your buffs, your fight duration, armor, boss level, rotation. Don't forget to change your rotation, guys, in the spreadsheet. And then you go to the cooldowns tab, set your cooldowns for how you want to use your cooldowns, your when you have the spore buff, whether you're going to go 2 spore buffs or 1 spore buff, depending on your kill time. So again, the too long didn't read is for daggers. So for daggers, the skipping the spores has slightly less penalty. Typically for most dagger rogues, if you're not getting value from the second spore, I'd say skip the second spore entirely. You can even skip the first spore in some cases. You have to sim to see whether it's worth it for you, and have to look at your in and out time, how efficient you are with getting the first spore. But the first spore is the only one I would go for if you're only getting semi value from the second spore. You're not getting the full uptime of 90 seconds from it. For sword rogues, first spore I would absolutely get, as long as you're doing it efficiently. And then the second spore, again, you have to look at your choice there. And for Darkmantle, when you're swapping in your Darkmantle set, which tends to be the highest DPS gain for most people, is you want to do chests and braces to start with. Chests and braces perform well, and then you have to figure out your other 2 pieces based on what gear you have. Your other 2 pieces are going to depend on your own gear. But start with chests and braces for me personally is where I found the 2 highest DPS, the least amount of DPS loss when swapping in the Darkmantle. And the last thing I want to point out again is for worse geared rogues. The worse geared you are, the better this is going to be, because you just gain more and more DPS going back to Darkmantle versus the better geared rogues. So if you're poorly geared, this is going to perform even better for you on the Loatheb pass. All right. So yeah, that's basically it. Again, Darkmantle tends to outperform the hit set, but you can swap in the hit set if you prefer. You don't like Darkmantle RNG or whatever it is. Hit set works as well. So again, the pieces that you want to look at, let me type it up. So Bloodfang chest, potentially Bloodfang braces / QEB. Percent hit cloak if no hit on back. DFT, Akuria. And then if you have really, really bad trinkets, you can even do Dalmau trinket. Dalmau trinket if really bad trinkets. And then boots of the Shadow Flame. Alright, so those are the hit pieces you can look at if you want to do a hit set instead of Darkmantle. Or you can combine both depending on your gear. My gear is just good enough that I can't really fit anything else in, really, to get much of a gain, so I only go Darkmantle. But if your gear's bad enough, you could do both. Alright, so I hope this helped you guys out. And yeah, okay. Guys, questions? Any questions?